Hello everyone, welcome to this month's Gosho study. We'll be studying a passage from the Gosho, the hero of the world, written by Nichiren on July 1277. When Ikeda-sensei lectured on this Gosho, he summarized it as the victory of the disciples is the victory of the mentor and the victory of Buddhism. Please check out the full lecture from this publication. This is the passage we are studying this month. Let me read the first passage to you. Since childhood, I, Nichiren, have never prayed for the secular things of this life, but have single-mindedly sought to become a Buddha. Of late, however, I have been ceaselessly praying for your sake to the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha, and the God of the Sun. Looking at the passage, we can tell that it is written to a disciple who is facing a huge struggle in life, so much so that the Daishonin is driven to pray for his or her victory. We often see the Daishonin writing to his disciples to guide them on matters of faith. Such is the Daishonin's deep compassion for the well-being of all his disciples. The passage continues, "For I'm convinced that you are a person who can inherit the soul of the Lotus Sutra." Now, based on my research using the Chinese version, there is only one other Gosho addressed to a disciple written in the same manner. Now, here they are listed together with the Chinese phrase, 续法华经之命. Now, one is translated as soul, and the other is translated as life. I personally felt that the choice of the word soul perfectly captures the essence of this month's Gosho's recipient's struggle and achievement. Now, kudos to the translation team. As such, inheriting the soul of the Lotus Sutra is the key concept of this month's study. Now, let's go to the background of both Goshos. Now, around the time of the Daishonin, Buddhism was studied only by the priests and society's elite. In society, from the emperor down to the commoners, Buddhist practice is one where you pray to the Buddha for your wishes to be fulfilled, and that's all. Now, those days, certain priests have very high social standing and are supported by the society's elite. One such priest is called Ryokan. Now, the Daishonin felt something amiss of the Buddhist practice of his day. He therefore studied deeply into the Buddhist sutras and is convinced that the true intention of Buddhism, represented most directly by the Lotus Sutra, is to awaken people to the truth that all human beings have unlimited potential, are inherently strong and wise, and always able to change their circumstances and society for the better. Relating to this month's Gosho, anyone who can fully put this into practice and help others do the same can be referred to as inheriting the soul of the Lotus Sutra. As such, he started to expound the Buddhist practice, chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, to enable anyone who followed his conclusion to attain Buddhahood this lifetime. Now, this proclamation would, however, anger the priesthood and society's elite that supported them, for it goes against the prevailing view of Buddhism of that day. Groups of them, the most powerful being led by priest Ryokan, then colluded to harm the Daishonin. Now, as a result, the Daishonin suffered many persecutions, such as the Tsunokuchi persecution and the Sado exile, both of which he miraculously survived. Then in the year 1274, after his return from the Sado exile, the Daishonin went to live in Mount Minabu. He wanted to focus his remaining years on raising capable disciples and to clarify his teaching for the sake of the future. Now, this move by the Daishonin caused several key disciples, such as the Ikegami brothers and Shijo Kingo, just to name a few, to deepen their mission as disciples and to double down on their propagation efforts. Now, this deeply angered the priest Ryokan, who would now look for opportunities to direct the persecutions at the disciples instead. Now, immediately, Ryokan instigated the father of the Ikegami brothers to disown the eldest son so as to force all his sons and their wives to discard their faith in Daishonin's Buddhism. However, all of them united together, following the Daishonin's guidance, and continued to treat their father with utmost care and respect, despite his hostility towards all of them. Now, 4 years later, the father became deeply moved by their sincerity and became the Daishonin's disciple. Wonderful, isn't it? Now, as such, the Daishonin wrote to Nichiren, the eldest daughter-in-law. It reads, "Even under such circumstances, as a woman, you have inherited the life of the Lotus Sutra." Now, as the only other disciple to receive such praise, I strongly believe that she is the central figure that supported and led the entire family into awakening their mission to achieve absolute family happiness and thoroughly defeating the evil plot of Ryokan in the process. Now let's move on to the recipient of this month's Gosho. Now in August 1274, Shijo Kingo, a key disciple, decided to share the Daishonin's teaching with Lord Emma, of whom he served as a retainer. Now he was not well received by Lord Emma as he is a follower of Ryokan. Now Lord Emma then started to distance himself from Kingo. Now out of rivalry, Kingo's other colleagues seized the chance to plot against him by spreading false information about Kingo to Lord Emma. Now like the Ikegami family, this is the start of a persecution that is to last several years. Now in June 1277, the misinformation about Kingo by his colleagues to Lord Emma finally culminated to his wrath. He wanted Kingo to renounce his faith or risk having his lands confiscated. Now in today's context, it is equivalent to being told by our bosses that if we don't discard our faith, we will be losing our job or lose a substantial part of our salary. Now upon this, Kingo immediately sought guidances from the Daishonin, and the writing, The Hero of the World, is one of the letters he received. Now the heart of this letter is the message that Buddhism primarily concerns itself with victory or defeat. So how did the Daishonin guide him in this letter? He wrote that since childhood, he has been single-mindedly praying to attain Buddhahood. Now attaining Buddhahood means to open forth and manifest the immeasurable potential that is inherent within our lives and help others do the same. In other words, it is to realize happiness for both oneself and others. By living our life with the heart of altruism, our efforts will not only help to benefit others, but will also help develop and forge our own lives, to become individuals who are deeply trusted by others. Buddhism terms this as a life dedicated to the Bodhisattva way. Now the Daishonin continues. He first mentioned, I have been ceaselessly praying for your sake, and later continues, be extremely careful, and so forth. Down-to-earth mundane advice since Buddhism is reason. Now by putting prayers before any mundane strategy, the Daishonin reminds Kingo that he must always first make Buddhism his foundation, basing his life on faith in the mystic law, no matter what happens, before any mundane strategy. Therefore, inheriting the soul of the Lotus Sutra is also known as using the strategy of the Lotus Sutra. Thus, 2 years later, in 1279, the Daishonin again wrote to Shijo Kingo, based on the strategy of the Lotus Sutra before any other. Have profound faith. A coward cannot have any of his prayers answered. Now, since the whole matter is a misunderstanding on Lord Emma's part, given time and chance, it may eventually come to light. But should Kingo cower to the threats out of fear of losing his lands and betray his own belief, he will only stand to lose all respect from Lord Emma. As such, the Daishonin teaches Kingo that it is not a matter of choosing between his faith and his job. Instead, Kingo should continue to conduct himself with integrity and sincerity based on resolute faith and show great actual proof as a samurai retainer. Now the Daishonin assures Kingo that by proving himself as a trustworthy individual, he will surely be able to regain the trust from his lord. Like the Ikegami family, Kingo faithfully followed the Daishonin's guidance and conducted himself with integrity. Shortly thereafter, Lord Emma fell ill, and the treatment administered by Kingo, who was also a skilled physician, effected a cure. Now, Lord Emma then renewed his trust in Kingo, and the following year, bestowed upon him a far larger fief than the one he already had. Wonderful again, isn't it? So this brings us to the key point number 1, which is forging the heart of altruism to become a person who is trusted by others. Now we have talked about many aspects on inheriting the soul of the Lotus Sutra. One final aspect I'd like to cover today is called the oneness of mentor and disciple spirit. In the Gosho Many Embody One in Mind, the Daishonin wrote, although Nichiren and his followers are few, because they are different in body but united in mind, they will definitely accomplish their great mission of widely propagating the Lotus Sutra. Now let us ask ourselves, which organization in the modern day is truly spreading the Daishonin's teaching with the same spirit as he is? Now this brings me to key point number 2, which is, it is the Soka Gakkai that has inherited the soul of the Lotus Sutra. Now on this important declaration, I'd like to quote from New Human Revolution Volume 30, Vow Chapter, to state what the Soka Gakkai represents. Now Ikeda Sensei wrote, President Toda's guidance is that the Soka Gakkai must remain directly connected to the Daishonin's teaching through his writing. The Soka Gakkai strives to fulfill the great vow for Kosen-Rufu through the compassionate propagation of the great law. He insisted that there was no need for anyone to act as an intermediary between us and Nichiren, and that in the context of the Soka Gakkai, the role of leaders was simply to help people forge their own direct connection with the Daishonin. Presidents Makizuchi and Toda selflessly dedicated themselves to spreading the mystic law just as Nichiren instructed. They set an example of how his disciples should strive in faith and practice. Now in the Soka Gakkai, the mentor-disciple relationship, our fellow members, and the organization all exist for teaching and learning the spirit of the Daishonin and correct Buddhist faith and practice based on his writings. Now with this, I'd like to end tonight's sharing with a guidance from Ikeda Sensei. Ikeda Sensei says, I hope that all of you will become good friends to others by being warm, supportive, and caring, and that you will particularly encourage and support your juniors in faith many times more than the support and encouragement you yourself have received. I hope you personally work to raise people who can inherit the soul of the Lotus Sutra. Devoting yourself to the happiness of your fellow members in faith is devoting yourself to Kosen-Rufu and the Buddha. Now, thank you all for listening.